Hello everybody, today we're going to be going over Hurricane Isaias, which is currently north of the Dominican Republic. It's going to be moving up the east coast as a hurricane, currently a Category 1 hurricane. It's going to intensify to a Category 2 hurricane off the shore of Georgia and South Carolina, and then it will be moving up the east coast as a Category 1 hurricane or a high-end tropical storm as it moves into the northeast coast, impacting those areas with some gusty winds and some potential rainfall out of this storm. So we're going to be going over that in today's video, as well as my personal hurricane intensity forecast, as well as my cone of uncertainty forecast. So here's the current National Weather Service page. Over the western United States, we have red flag warnings, excessive heat warnings, and also some heat advisories in place for much of the western United States, as well as some heat advisories for parts of the Carolinas and also for southern Florida there. And then we have a large band of flood watches that's stretching all the way from Missouri to about Virginia and Maryland there. We also see off the shore of Florida, we do have some hurricane watches and tropical storm warnings in effect for the coastal waters off southeastern Florida and into the Bahamas. Now, here is your 5-day graphical outlook from the National Hurricane Center. They have a disturbance east of Isaias, which has a 20% chance of developing within the next 5 days. And then we have another one that's off the shore of Africa that has a 20% chance of developing within the next 48 hours and the next 5 days. And then you see Isaias right there, which is currently east of Cuba and northwest of the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Now, here is where the low pressure system currently is. Well, we have it's at 21 degrees north by about 74 degrees west, and we currently have sustained wind speeds at the surface of about 65 knots, excuse me, and that would be right around 75 miles per hour, which is again above that hurricane strength. Now, here is the current aircraft Recon. This is the one that I believe initiated them putting this out as a hurricane. You do see that we did find some a good band of about 64 to 96 mile per or 96 knot wind speeds at flight level. They will decrease, of course, with while it goes down with height. But we did find at the surface, we did find 65 knot wind speed. So that is why they most likely brought this to a hurricane. Now, here is the current watches and warnings for this storm, as well as the current wind field extent. We have tropical storm warnings for parts of the southeastern Bahamas, as well as much of the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic tropical storm warnings will most likely diminish within the next couple of hours. Hurricane warnings actually put up for much of the Bahamas, and I wouldn't be surprised if some tropical storm warnings actually do get put up, or maybe even hurricane warnings for that southeastern Florida region. Now, here is the key messages for Hurricane Isaias, and I'm not going to read these out right now. I did read them before, and I also read their discussion, but you guys can pause the video right here or go to hurricanes.gov if you do want to read this if you are interested. Now, here is the current cone of uncertainty forecast from the National Hurricane Center, and they're bringing this to a hurricane all the way up until it hits Virginia and North Carolina. By that point, they see it strengthening sometime between 2 a.m. Tuesday and 2 a.m. Wednesday to a tropical storm, and that would be a fairly high-end tropical storm by that point. It's really going to weaken, especially as it makes landfall, most likely with this region right here, as it's the first formidable area of land that it's interacted with since Hispaniola, where you had some mountains. North Carolina and Virginia really don't have mountains, especially throughout the eastern part of those states. Through the western parts, of course, they do have mountains there, but through the coastal areas, they don't have any really high elevation changes, so it shouldn't weaken too much, especially because it's moving over the Cape Hatteras region, where it's just a bunch of broken up islands. So that might actually help it stay together, since it's not moving over a very well defined landmass. It's not moving generally inland, and it will actually have more time to strengthen as it moves off the northeast coastal waters. Now, here is your past wind field extent. You see, we did have some tropical storm force wind speeds over the northern Leeward Islands all the way to the southern Bahamas, and hurricane force wind speeds for parts of the southwestern Bahamas as well. Now, here's your chances of seeing tropical storm force wind speeds, and you do see that we have a decent chance, especially offshore, between 30 and about 70% chance of that. But onshore, it's only about 5 to about 30 or 40% chance of that occurring, especially the high GFS values for parts of North Carolina as well as parts of Florida. Now, here is your 58 mile per hour wind speed probabilities, and we do have onshore about 5 to 20% chance of that. Offshore, we have about a 30 to about 70% chance of that, and for the southern Bahamas, closer to a 100% chance of that. Now, here's your chances of seeing hurricane force wind speeds, and they bring this to close to 100% for parts of the southernmost Bahamas. And as you get closer to land, that's where you start to taper off, and it's about 5 to 10% chance of that occurring. And don't be surprised if they really up these values and move these values up north. Now, here is your current model track guidance from the main models, and they have tracked westward from yesterday. Yesterday they were out here pretty much with their model tracks. Now they've moved much further to the west, and they are now interacting with the northeast coast a little bit more than they were yesterday. That was always the biggest uncertainty, whether this will impact the northeast coast or whether it'll be so off the shore that you won't see that. Again, we are seeing this big high pressure system move further to the north. That's going to curve this around kind of like this, and then eventually it'll be able to move out like this. But it does have to go around this high pressure system. It depends how close to shore this high pressure system is and how weak this system gets once it moves over North Carolina and also Virginia there. Now, here is your GFS Ensemble models, the American models. All of these models have it impacting parts of North and South Carolina, and then it moves very close to the northeast coast. The problem with the GFS model is that it's a very weak storm by that point, because the GEFS storms are a little bit too close to the coast for my liking. They bring this all the way through and kind of track it inland for much of this, and some of these models even have it going into the Gulf of Mexico and then curving back on land. So I wouldn't trust the GEFS too much, and personally I'm not going to rely on that model too much. As well, we have the Canadian ensemble models, which are a little bit more all over the place. They show basically two different solutions. They show this solution where it would go kind of like this on the East Coast, and then we have another one where it would make impact with the Panhandle of Florida. So two different solutions. Most likely the East Coast solution is going to pan out. Now here's your intensity guidance, and you see a very weak Category 1, and it is going to stay pretty steady, if not weakening, over the next couple of days. I do think you're going to see a little bit of strengthening within the next 24 hours or so. The National Hurricane Center bring this again to about a Category 2 strength, high-end Category 1, low-end Category 2 strength on their forecast advisory. And then you see this time frame is actually when it's going to be impacting parts of North Carolina and Virginia. You see how drastically goes down in intensity while that happens. Now, here is your forecasted rainfall from the Weather Prediction Center, and this is a close-in view from the southeast view, and they bring it for the Bahamas about 4 to about 10 inches of rainfall in those oranges, and then in those greens for the southeast coast, we have about 2 to 4 inches, and some locally higher amounts of about 4 to 6 inches could be expected. Now, here is your ingredients for the storm. We have very, very warm sea surface temperatures that are well above average, and off the shore of North and South Carolina, off the shore of Georgia and Florida, you have water temperatures that are about 28 to about 31 degrees Celsius, which is anywhere from about 86 to about 92 or so degrees Fahrenheit, which is very, very warm. You only need 80-degree Fahrenheit waters to really support or intensify a hurricane or a tropical storm, and we definitely have that all the way up into parts of New Jersey and the Mid-Atlantic. There you have actually some 80 to 82 degree waters Fahrenheit off the shore of the Mid-Atlantic. Now, here is how above average or below average those sea surface temperatures are, your anomalies, and they are well above average, especially as you see on the on the top corner of your screen. They're well above average, about 5 degrees above average, especially for the northeast coast. For the southeast coast, it's only about 1 to about 3 degrees above average, which is still well above average. That's all in Celsius, which would mean that it's more about 4 to about 10 degrees Fahrenheit above your normal, which is definitely very, very favorable for some sort of storm to develop. Now, let's start talking about my personal forecast for this event, and I am forecasting this. Currently, it is north of Haiti and east of Cuba. Now, we are going to see this move throughout the Bahamas, and then really the big question is how far offshore does it stay, and whether, especially, it's going to be a bigger question as you move into the northeast, where it's going to be a bigger question of how far offshore is this going to stay. Because if this is a couple hundred miles offshore, you're not going to see any impacts. If this is hugging the coast, you might actually see some tropical tropical storm force wind speeds out of this. So that's the biggest question that we're going to really need to figure out, especially as it gets off the shore of the Carolinas. We'll have a lot more clarity on especially the northeast portion of this forecast. This is a 5-day forecast from the 31st to August 4th, which is today, all the way until August 4th. Also notice really most of these models, once they get to about here, this is where some models end their 5-day time frame, while other models are all the way up here with their 5-day time frame. So some models are much faster than these other models, and I also had to take that into account with this forecast as well. Now, here's your hurricane intensity forecast that I personally made. I'm thinking this is going to be a weak Category 2 as it intensifies, maybe even a high-end Category 1 by that point. Now, it's going to weaken as it starts to move off the shore of the Carolinas, and then once it hits the Carolinas by that 96 to 120 hour time frame, it should drastically weaken to about a low-end tropical storm or middle-end tropical storm, and then might actually strengthen a little bit again as it starts to move off the shore of the northeast. Now, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.